Think for a moment. Imagine that everything you were taught about Jesus is only the surface of a much deeper ocean. Imagine that beneath familiar images, sermons, and doctrines, there exists a luminous and unsettling truth, that the message of Jesus was not meant merely to be believed, but to be experienced as an inner awakening. Imagine that his words were not designed to create followers who look outward for salvation, but seekers who dare to turn inward and discover a living light within the soul. What if the greatest teaching of Jesus was never about distant heavens, but about a transformation that happens inside you? And what if the final insight revealed in this journey is the most powerful of all, capable of reshaping how you understand consciousness, divinity, and your own existence? Across centuries, mystics and philosophers have sensed that the teachings of Jesus carry layers far deeper than literal interpretation. His words seem simple, yet they echo endlessly in the minds of those who contemplate them deeply. This is because they belong to what scholars call perennial wisdom, a timeless stream of truth transmitted through symbols, parables, and sacred language. Long before organized religion took shape, ancient civilizations already spoke of an inner light, a divine spark hidden within the human being. Jesus did not invent this idea. He embodied it and gave it voice in a way that could reach fishermen, scholars, and kings alike. Ponder this carefully. When Jesus speaks of light, he does not describe an external flame or celestial object. He says, "The light of the body is the eye. If your eye is single, your whole body will be full of light." This statement alone opens a vast inner landscape of meaning. Esoteric traditions understand the single eye as unified consciousness, awareness no longer divided by fear, desire, or illusion. To be full of light is to live from the soul rather than from the fragmented ego. Here, light becomes synonymous with awakened awareness. Before continuing, if these reflections resonate with something deep inside you, take a moment now. Subscribe to the channel, leave a like, share this video with those who feel drawn to spiritual depth, and write in the comments what the idea of inner light means to you personally. Stay with me, because what unfolds ahead will reveal mysteries that can profoundly alter how you see life, the universe, and your place within it. Jesus consistently pointed inward. When asked about the kingdom of God, he said it does not come with signs to be observed, nor can it be pointed out as here or there, because the kingdom is within you. This statement alone destabilizes purely external religion. It suggests that divinity is not confined to temples, institutions, or future rewards, but is an inner reality waiting to be realized. Early mystics understood this clearly. For them, salvation was not escape from the world, but illumination of the soul. Scholars such as Origen of Alexandria taught that sacred texts operate on multiple levels. The literal level speaks to the mind, but the spiritual level speaks directly to the soul. On this deeper level, Jesus becomes a living symbol of the awakened human being. His life represents the inner journey each person must undertake, the birth of awareness, the confrontation with inner darkness, the death of false identity, and the resurrection of higher consciousness. This interpretation aligns closely with Hermetic philosophy, attributed to Hermes Trismegistus, which teaches that humans are both earthly and divine, asleep to their origin until knowledge awakens them. Consider the role of parables. Jesus rarely explained his teachings directly. Instead, he wrapped them in stories of seeds, lamps, weddings, and hidden treasures. Carl Jung later observed that symbols bypass the rational mind and speak directly to the unconscious. Parables are not meant to be solved intellectually, but contemplated inwardly. When Jesus speaks of a treasure hidden in a field, he is not merely describing moral virtue, but the divine essence concealed within the soul, waiting for those willing to give everything to uncover it. The light of the soul in this context is not a metaphor chosen at random. Light has always symbolized consciousness itself. To awaken is to see. To remain asleep is to walk in darkness. Jesus repeatedly contrasts light and darkness, not as moral judgments but as states of awareness. Darkness is ignorance of one's true nature. Light is remembrance of it. Modern historians such as Elaine Pagels have shown that early Christian communities preserved mystical interpretations of Jesus' teachings, many of which emphasized direct inner knowledge rather than external authority. These groups believed that Christ was not only a historical figure, but a principle of consciousness that could be realized within each individual. Over time, Many of these ideas were suppressed, but traces remain embedded in the sayings of Jesus for those with ears to hear. As we move forward, reflect on this question and hold it within you. If Jesus truly spoke of an inner light, why has humanity so often searched for it outside? And what would happen if you dared to seek it within yourself? The answers will unfold as we continue. Approve this part so we may proceed further into the deeper revelations that await. Know thyself, and thou shalt know the universe and the gods, attributed to the Delphic tradition, later echoed in Hermetic philosophy. Now, think more deeply. Imagine that the figure of Jesus is not only a teacher standing before a crowd, but a mirror held up to the soul of humanity. A mirror meant to reveal what we truly are beneath layers of fear, conditioning, and forgetfulness. When Jesus speaks of being born again, he is not referring to a physical rebirth, but to a radical inner transformation, a shift in consciousness so profound that the old self can no longer survive it. This is not symbolic exaggeration. It is the core of mystical awakening. In esoteric understanding, rebirth is the moment when the soul awakens to its own light. Ancient mystery traditions describe this process as illumination, remembrance, or awakening from spiritual sleep. Jesus expresses the same truth through spiritual language accessible to his listeners. When he tells Nicodemus that one must be born of water and spirit, he is describing purification of the emotional nature and awakening of higher awareness. Water cleanses the inner world, spirit ignites the inner light. Consider how often Jesus challenges identity. He asks his followers to leave behind family, possessions, and even their former names. This is not a rejection of human bonds, but a dismantling of the false self. Mystics across cultures agree that the ego identity must dissolve for the soul to shine unobstructed. The light of the soul cannot fully emerge while the individual clings to fear-based definitions of who they are. Hermetic teachings state that ignorance is the greatest bondage and knowledge is liberation. This knowledge is not intellectual accumulation, but direct inner knowing. Jesus echoes this when he says that the truth will set you free. Truth, in this sense, is not doctrine, but clarity of being. It is the moment when illusion falls away and the soul recognizes its divine origin. Freedom then is not political or social, but spiritual liberation from inner darkness. If this perspective feels challenging, pause and ask yourself why. Could it be that true spiritual teaching is meant to disturb complacency? Jesus was not executed for preaching kindness alone. He was perceived as dangerous because his message threatened systems built on control, fear, and external authority. By teaching that divine light dwells within, he undermined the idea that power must come from institutions or intermediaries. Take a moment here to reflect and interact. Do you believe spiritual authority comes from outside or from within? Write your thoughts in the comments and share this reflection with someone who questions traditional narratives. Stay attentive, because the layers we are about to uncover grow even more profound. The crucifixion itself holds deep esoteric meaning. Beyond historical and theological interpretations, it symbolizes the inner death required for awakening. The cross represents the intersection of the material and the spiritual, the horizontal plane of earthly life, and the vertical ascent of consciousness. To be crucified inwardly is to surrender the ego, the false self that resists transformation. Only through this inner death can resurrection occur. Resurrection, then, is not merely an event in time, but a state of consciousness. It is the soul rising into awareness of its eternal nature. Early Christian mystics understood resurrection as something to be experienced inwardly here and now. Paul himself said that Christ must be formed within you. This statement is revolutionary when taken seriously. It implies that the light of Christ is a latent reality within every human being, awaiting activation. Philosophers such as Plotinus later described this process as the return of the soul to the One. Although he lived centuries after Jesus, the harmony between their teachings is striking. Both describe a movement from multiplicity back to unity, from fragmentation back to source. Jesus expresses this unity when he says that he and the Father are one, not as a claim of exclusivity, but as a revelation of what awakened consciousness realizes. The light of the soul is therefore not something granted from outside, it is remembered. Forgotten through fear, distraction, and identification with form, it waits patiently beneath the surface of ordinary life. Jesus' teachings are designed to shake the soul awake, to disturb the illusion that we are separate, powerless, or abandoned in a meaningless universe. As we continue, keep this question alive within you. If the light Jesus spoke of already exists within your soul, what is preventing you from seeing it? And what illusions might need to fall for that light to finally emerge? Approve this continuation so we may proceed deeper into the heart of this mystery. Until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life and you will call it fate. Carl Jung. Now allow this understanding to deepen even further. If Jesus was revealing the light of the soul, then his teachings were never meant to be passively admired. They were meant to be lived as an inner discipline, a continuous awakening that reshapes perception itself. This is why his words so often disturb comfort and certainty. They challenge the listener to step beyond habit, belief, and inherited identity. Spiritual light is not added to the soul. It is uncovered by removing what obscures it. Throughout the sayings attributed to Jesus, there is a recurring emphasis on vigilance. He urges his listeners to stay awake, to watch, to remain alert. These are not warnings about external danger alone. In mystical language, sleep represents unconscious living, a life guided by fear, impulse, and imitation. Awakening is the return of awareness to the present moment, where the soul can perceive truth directly. The light of the soul emerges when attention becomes clear and undivided. Consider the Sermon on the Mount. On the surface, it appears to be a collection of moral teachings, but read inwardly, it reveals a map of inner transformation. When Jesus speaks of purity of heart, he is not referring to moral perfection, but to inner clarity. A pure heart is a unified heart, free from inner division. Such a heart, he says, shall see God. Seeing God is not a physical act. It is perception awakened to reality as it truly is. This perspective aligns with ancient wisdom traditions that speak of inner alchemy. In Hermetic thought, transformation occurs when the base elements of the psyche are refined into spiritual gold. Fear becomes insight, desire becomes devotion, suffering becomes wisdom. Jesus expresses this alchemy through paradox. The last shall be first. Those who lose their life shall find it. These statements are not poetic exaggerations. They describe the reversal of consciousness that occurs when the soul awakens and the ego relinquishes control. Ask yourself something important here. Why do the teachings of Jesus continue to feel unsettling, even after centuries of repetition? Perhaps because they demand inner honesty. They strip away spiritual pretenses and confront the listener with their own inner state. Jesus speaks repeatedly about hypocrisy, not as moral insult, but as a condition of unconsciousness. To live divided between appearance and truth is to live without light. Modern psychology has rediscovered many of these insights. Carl Jung spoke of individuation as the process of becoming whole by integrating the unconscious. This mirrors the spiritual journey described in mystical Christianity. The light of the soul shines when hidden fears, denied emotions, and rejected aspects of the self are brought into awareness. Darkness is not destroyed by force. It dissolves in the presence of light. Jesus' emphasis on forgiveness also carries deep inner significance. Forgiveness is not merely a moral obligation toward others. It is liberation from the inner chains of resentment and identification with pain. When Jesus says to forgive endlessly, he is pointing toward freedom of consciousness. A soul bound by resentment cannot shine. Letting go is not weakness. It is illumination. Notice how often Jesus retreats into silence. He withdraws into the wilderness, away from crowds and noise. Silence, in mystical understanding, is not emptiness. It is the space where the soul hears truth without distortion. Silence allows the inner light to emerge naturally. This is why contemplative traditions within Christianity emphasized stillness, prayer of the heart, and inner watchfulness. They understood that spiritual light arises when the mind becomes quiet enough to receive it. Scholars such as Thomas Merton later emphasized this contemplative dimension, warning that spirituality without inner depth becomes performance rather than transformation. Jesus never sought admiration. He sought awakening. His harshest words were reserved not for sinners, but for those who mistook external religiosity for inner illumination. As this understanding unfolds, reflect on your own inner life. Where do you seek light outside yourself? Approval, certainty, authority, recognition? And what would happen if you turned inward with the same intensity? The teachings of Jesus suggest that the soul already knows the way. It only waits for attention, sincerity, and courage. Hold this question gently but firmly. If the light of the soul is real, how would your life change if you lived from it rather than searching for it? The answer to this question draws us closer to the final and most powerful revelation still ahead. Approve this part, so we may proceed to the final unfolding of this journey. What you seek is seeking you. Rumi. Now we arrive at the deepest layer of this journey, the point where all symbols dissolve and only understanding remains. Everything that has been explored so far leads to a single realization that is both unsettling and liberating. If Jesus revealed the light of the soul, then his message was never about creating dependency, fear, or blind belief. It was about awakening responsibility, awareness, and inner authority. The most powerful truth is not something to be accepted intellectually, but something to be recognized inwardly. When Jesus declares, "You are the light of the world," he is not offering encouragement in poetic form. He is unveiling a metaphysical reality. The soul, at its core, is luminous consciousness. This light is not earned through moral perfection, nor granted by institutions. It exists prior to belief, prior to doctrine, prior even to language. Jesus speaks from direct realization, and his words carry authority precisely because they point beyond themselves. To understand this, one must grasp the meaning of Christ beyond history. In mystical theology, Christ represents the Logos, the divine intelligence permeating all existence. This intelligence is not distant or abstract. It is the organizing principle of consciousness itself. To awaken the Christ within is to align personal awareness with this deeper order. This is why Paul's words are so radical when taken seriously. It is no longer the fragmented ego that lives, but awakened consciousness expressing itself through the human form. Fear is the greatest obscurer of the soul's light. Fear contracts perception, fragments awareness, and traps consciousness in survival patterns. Jesus confronts fear relentlessly, not through denial, but through transcendence. He speaks of death as sleep, of life as eternal, of loss as gain. These statements are not meant to comfort the anxious mind, but to dismantle it. Eternal life in this understanding is not endless duration after death, but timeless awareness realized now. This realization transforms the meaning of salvation. Salvation is not rescue from punishment, but liberation from ignorance. Ignorance of one's true nature is the original bondage. Jesus addresses this when he speaks of blindness more often than sin. To see clearly is to be free. To remain unconscious is to wander in darkness even while believing oneself righteous. Suffering, then, takes on a new dimension. Jesus never romanticizes pain, yet he reveals its initiatory role. The cross, inwardly understood, is the pressure that exposes false identity. Every human being carries a cross, moments when illusions collapse and control is lost. These moments are not failures, they are thresholds. When resisted, they harden the ego. When accepted with awareness, they ignite transformation. Resurrection is the natural consequence of surrendering false selfhood. Love stands at the center of this awakening. Jesus' command to love without condition is not moral idealism, it is metaphysical instruction. Love dissolves the illusion of separation. Judgment reinforces it. When consciousness perceives unity, love flows naturally. This is why love is inseparable from light. Hatred darkens perception. Compassion clarifies it. To love one's enemy is to refuse the fragmentation of consciousness. The radical nature of Jesus' teaching lies in its demand for inner honesty. There is no one else to blame, no external savior to replace inner work. If the kingdom is within, then awakening is a personal responsibility. This truth is unsettling because it removes excuses, yet it is liberating because it returns power to where it belongs, within awareness itself. Silence becomes essential here. Not silence as absence of sound, but as presence without distraction. In stillness, the soul recognizes itself. This is why contemplative practices were central to early mystical Christianity. They were not rituals for approval, but pathways to perception. In silence, the light of the soul reveals itself effortlessly. The final revelation promised from the beginning is this: Jesus did not come to bring light into a dark world. He came to reveal that the world appears dark because humanity has forgotten its own light. Darkness is not an opposing force, it is the absence of awareness. When one soul awakens, darkness diminishes. When many awaken, reality itself shifts. This understanding transforms everyday life. Work becomes expression. Relationships become mirrors. Challenges become teachers. Nothing is outside the path anymore. The sacred is no longer confined to temples or texts. It is recognized in breath, in presence, in attention. The soul's light does not withdraw from the world. It illuminates it. Now reflect deeply and honestly. If you truly accepted that the light of the soul lives within you, how would you live differently? What fears would dissolve? What illusions would no longer hold power? What choices would change if you acted not from fear, but from clarity? The teachings of Jesus endure not because they demand belief, but because they invite awakening. They remain alive because they point to something timeless within you. The journey does not end with words. It begins with awareness. The light you have been seeking has never been distant. It has been waiting patiently, quietly, within the depths of your own soul. Thanks for looking. Imagine for a moment that the greatest miracles ever witnessed by humanity were not lost to time but intentionally erased. Think deeply about this idea. Not forgotten through neglect, not distorted by innocent mistakes, but systematically removed, censored, burned, rewritten, and buried under layers of acceptable history. Imagine that what you were taught in school is not a lie, but an incomplete truth, carefully shaped to exclude everything that could awaken something powerful inside you. What if the true story of humanity includes wonders so profound that, if known, they would forever change how you see yourself and the universe? Think about how often you were told that miracles belong only to myths, fairy tales, or blind faith. Imagine if ancient people did not see miracles as violations of natural law, but as expressions of laws that modern humanity has forgotten. Imagine civilizations that understood consciousness as a force, thought as a creative power, and the human being as a bridge between the material and the divine. What if levitation, spontaneous healing, prophecy, and direct communication with higher realms were once studied, practiced, and recorded before being labeled dangerous and removed from official memory? In this video, you will explore the hidden side of history, the side that was never meant to survive. You will uncover why entire libraries vanished, why sacred knowledge was declared heresy, and why the miraculous was slowly replaced by rigid dogma and material explanations. You will begin to notice a repeating pattern. Whenever humanity gets too close to understanding its true potential, something intervenes to reset the narrative. And toward the end of this journey, you will discover the most powerful revelation of all, one that does not belong to the past, but to you, in this very moment. Before we go further, if you feel drawn to these mysteries, support this channel. Subscribe, leave a like, share this video with those who question reality, and comment with your thoughts. What do you believe has been hidden from humanity? What truths do you sense were removed from our collective memory? What we are about to uncover has the potential to transform how you understand life, consciousness, and existence itself. To understand what was removed, we must first understand how ancient civilizations perceived reality. In ancient Egypt, the priesthood of the mystery schools taught that the universe was alive, intelligent, and responsive to consciousness. Healing was not merely physical but energetic and spiritual. Records describe the use of sound, light, geometry, and focused intention to restore harmony within the body and soul. Scholars such as James Henry Breasted noted that Egyptian spiritual science was far more advanced than later interpretations allowed. What modern historians often describe as symbolism may have been precise knowledge encoded to survive suppression. The Hermetic teachings, attributed to Hermes Trismegistus, formed the philosophical backbone of much ancient wisdom. These teachings spoke of universal principles governing all existence, including mental causation and correspondence. According to Hermetic philosophy, the mind shapes reality, and what happens on one level of existence reflects on another. When these laws were understood, what appeared miraculous became a natural outcome of alignment with universal order. Think about how threatening this idea is to any system built on external authority. A human who understands these principles no longer needs permission to access power. In ancient India, sacred texts such as the Upanishads and the Yoga Sutras described siddhis, extraordinary abilities arising from mastery of consciousness. These were not presented as supernatural gifts, but as natural byproducts of spiritual discipline. Historian and philosopher Mircea Eliade documented how descriptions of these abilities remained consistent across centuries and regions, suggesting a shared experiential foundation rather than myth. Yet, over time, these accounts were dismissed as exaggerations or allegories, stripped of their literal meaning to fit a more controlled worldview. Ancient Greece offers another striking example. Philosophers such as Pythagoras were said to influence matter through sound and number, heal illness through harmonic resonance, and demonstrate knowledge that bordered on the miraculous. Plato himself hinted that true knowledge was dangerous in the wrong hands, requiring careful transmission. Later, historians, uncomfortable with these implications, reinterpreted such accounts as symbolic storytelling rather than lived reality. But ask yourself this: why do so many independent cultures describe similar abilities using different languages and symbols? As organized institutions gained power, especially during the early centuries of religious consolidation, the miraculous shifted from being a universal human potential to a controlled exception. Only selected figures were allowed to perform wonders, and even then only under strict interpretation. Texts that suggested ordinary humans could access divine power directly were condemned. Councils were convened to decide which writings were acceptable and which were dangerous. Entire Gospels, scrolls, and teachings disappeared. The destruction of the Library of Alexandria stands as a symbol of this loss, a place where science, spirituality, and miracle once coexisted openly. Ask yourself why so much effort was invested in removing these ideas. Why burn texts, silence mystics, and label direct spiritual experience as heresy? Could it be that the greatest miracle ever removed from history is not an event, but a truth about you? In the next part, we will go deeper into how these removals reshaped human consciousness and why the world you live in today is built upon what was deliberately taken away. Imagine waking up in a world where the miraculous has been quietly replaced by obedience, where wonder has been traded for certainty, and where the mystery of existence has been reduced to what can be measured, labeled, and controlled. This did not happen by accident. It was the result of centuries of deliberate decisions that reshaped not only history, but the human mind itself. To understand the hidden miracles removed from history, we must now look at what replaced them and why that replacement was so effective. As spiritual authority became centralized, direct experience of the divine was gradually discouraged. Instead of inner knowing, humanity was taught dependence. Instead of personal revelation, people were offered doctrine. Miracles were no longer something that emerged naturally from alignment with universal principles, but rare events reserved for distant saints, prophets, or figures placed far above ordinary humanity. This subtle shift changed everything. It planted the idea that power exists outside of you, that truth must be granted, and that the sacred is unreachable without permission. Throughout the Middle Ages, countless mystics described experiences that echoed ancient miracle traditions. Hildegard of Bingen spoke of divine visions and healing through sound and light. Meister Eckhart taught that the divine spark lives within every soul, accessible through inner silence. Yet many of these voices were censored, misunderstood, or posthumously reinterpreted to remove their radical implications. Their writings survived only because they were carefully framed in language acceptable to authority. Ask yourself how many others were silenced completely, their experiences erased because they threatened the established order. The removal of miracles was not only religious, but philosophical. With the rise of strict materialism, reality was redefined as something separate from consciousness. René Descartes divided mind and matter, creating a worldview where inner experience was secondary, unreliable, or irrelevant. While this framework allowed for incredible technological advancement, it came at a cost. The inner sciences of consciousness, long associated with miraculous transformation, were dismissed as superstition. What could not be quantified was excluded from truth. Think about how this shift affects you today. From a young age, you were likely taught to distrust intuition, imagination, and inner knowing. You were encouraged to look outward for validation, solutions, and meaning. Yet ancient teachings across cultures insist that the greatest miracles occur within, before they ever manifest without. Carl Jung later echoed this idea, stating that modern humanity suffers not from lack of knowledge, but from loss of meaning. When the miraculous inner world is denied, the soul becomes restless, disconnected, and hungry. Even science, when examined honestly, begins to circle back to what was removed. Quantum physics reveals a universe deeply intertwined with observation and consciousness. Researchers like Max Planck acknowledge that matter itself may arise from a conscious field. Yet, these ideas remain largely separated from everyday understanding, kept within academic boundaries. Why? Because if consciousness shapes reality, then the ancient miracle traditions were not primitive myths, but early explorations of a profound truth modern humanity is only beginning to rediscover. Consider how often similar stories appear across cultures that never contacted one another. Accounts of spontaneous healing, visions of light, near-death experiences, and transformative awakenings repeat with striking consistency. Anthropologist Joseph Campbell observed that myth is the language through which eternal truths are transmitted when direct expression becomes dangerous. Perhaps what we call myth today is simply truth spoken in disguise, preserved beneath layers of symbolism until humanity is ready to remember. The removal of miracles also served another purpose: fear. When people believe the universe is indifferent and meaningless, they become easier to control. But when people know that consciousness matters, that intention has power, and that transformation is possible, fear loses its grip. This is why the most dangerous miracle of all was never fire from the sky or water turned into wine, but the realization that the divine operates through you. Pause for a moment and ask yourself, what if the reason these miracles were removed from history is because they point to something authorities could never control? What if remembering them is not about nostalgia, but about reclaiming a forgotten aspect of your own nature? In the next part, we will explore how these hidden miracles still surface today, despite centuries of suppression, and how they quietly shape the lives of those who dare to look beyond the visible. There is a reason these hidden miracles never disappeared completely. No matter how many texts were destroyed, how many teachings were banned, or how deeply materialism reshaped human thought, the miraculous continued to surface quietly, persistently, and often in places where authority was weakest. Truth has a way of leaking through the cracks. What was removed from history did not vanish, it went underground, preserved through experience rather than doctrine. Throughout the centuries, individuals across the world continued to report encounters that defied accepted explanations. Spontaneous healings occurred without medical intervention. Ordinary people experienced moments of profound clarity where time seemed to stop and reality felt alive, intelligent, and responsive. Saints, shamans, monks, and mystics described encounters with light, voices of wisdom, and states of unity that transformed their lives forever. These experiences were often dismissed, pathologized, or reduced to psychological anomalies, yet their impact on those who lived them was undeniable. William James, one of the founders of modern psychology, took these experiences seriously. He argued that mystical states, regardless of their cause, produced lasting positive transformations in perception, ethics, and meaning. He suggested that human consciousness operates on far more levels than ordinary awareness reveals. This aligns perfectly with ancient teachings that described miracles as shifts in consciousness rather than violations of nature. When awareness changes, reality appears to change with it. Carl Jung went even further. He observed that humanity carries a collective unconscious, filled with symbols, archetypes, and forgotten knowledge. According to Jung, when societies repress essential truths, those truths return through dreams, visions, and synchronicities. Could it be that the miracles removed from history now return through personal experience instead of public record? Jung himself experienced events he struggled to explain rationally, moments where inner images corresponded precisely with outer reality. Even modern neuroscience hints at this hidden dimension. Studies on meditation, prayer, and altered states of consciousness show measurable changes in brain activity that correlate with deep feelings of unity, compassion, and insight. People undergoing these states often report experiences nearly identical to those described in ancient mystical texts. Different language, same essence, different era, same miracle. This consistency suggests that these experiences are not cultural inventions, but intrinsic possibilities of the human mind. Near-death experiences offer another striking example. Across cultures and belief systems, Individuals who come close to death report similar phenomena: tunnels of light, encounters with loving presences, panoramic life reviews, and an overwhelming sense of meaning. Researchers like Raymond Moody documented these patterns extensively. Many who return describe losing their fear of death and developing a deep sense of purpose. If these accounts were found in ancient manuscripts, they would likely be labeled miracles. Today they are studied cautiously, often stripped of their spiritual implications. Why does this matter to you? Because these hidden miracles suggest that the extraordinary is not reserved for history or legend. It is woven into human consciousness itself. The suppression of miracles trained humanity to look outward for proof, authority, and validation. But the persistence of these experiences points inward. It suggests that the doorway to the miraculous was never truly closed, only forgotten. Ask yourself honestly, how often have you felt moments that defied explanation, a sudden insight that changed your path, a coincidence too meaningful to dismiss, a deep sense of connection that felt more real than ordinary life? What if these moments are echoes of the same miracles history tried to erase? What if remembering them is not about believing in the past, but awakening in the present? In the final part, we will bring all of this together. You will discover the most powerful miracle of all, the one that history could never fully remove because it lives within you. This last revelation will change how you understand yourself, reality, and the role you play in the unfolding of the universe. What history could never fully remove is not a miracle recorded in stone or ink, but a living truth encoded within human consciousness itself. Empires rise and fall, doctrines change, texts burn, but awareness remains. This is the final and most powerful miracle of all, the one quietly hinted at across every tradition, philosophy, and hidden teaching. The realization that the source of the miraculous was never external. It was always you. When ancient texts spoke of divine power, they were not pointing to distant gods, but to an inner capacity awakened through alignment, discipline, and understanding. The miracles attributed to sages, prophets, and enlightened beings were not meant to elevate them above humanity, but to reveal what humanity could become. Over time, this message was inverted. Figures were placed on unreachable pedestals, and their actions were reframed as unique exceptions rather than demonstrations of universal principles. This distortion ensured reverence without imitation. The Hermetic principle that all is mind was not a poetic metaphor. It was a direct statement about reality. Consciousness is not a byproduct of matter. Matter is an expression within consciousness. Modern thinkers such as David Bohm propose that reality unfolds from an implicate order, a deeper level where everything is connected. This idea mirrors ancient teachings that described reality as a unified field responsive to awareness. When this is understood, the miraculous ceases to be extraordinary. It becomes inevitable. This is why the final miracle was the most dangerous one to remove from history. A human who realizes their inner authority no longer needs external permission to seek truth, meaning, or transformation. Fear loses its power. Manipulation becomes visible. Life is no longer something that happens to you, but something that unfolds through you. Systems built on control cannot survive a population that understands this. The removal of miracles trained humanity to doubt itself, to believe that intuition is unreliable, that inner experiences are meaningless, that imagination is childish. Yet every major transformation in history began with an inner vision before it manifested outwardly. Every awakening, every discovery, every leap forward was first a miracle of consciousness. When you reconnect with this truth, you are not rejecting science or reason. You are completing them. Ask yourself now, honestly and without fear, what would change in your life if you trusted your inner knowing, if you treated consciousness not as an accident, but as the foundation of reality? If you understood that meaning is not assigned by the world, but generated from within? This is the question history tried to silence, because once asked sincerely, it cannot be undone. The hidden miracles removed from history were not removed because they were false, but because they were reminders. Reminders that humanity is more than obedient, more than mechanical, more than small. They pointed toward a reality where transformation is possible, where suffering is not the final word, and where awareness itself is sacred. As you reflect on everything explored in this journey, understand this: Remembering is an act of rebellion against forgetfulness. Awakening is not acquiring something new, but reclaiming what was always yours. The final miracle is not waiting in the past or promised in the future. It unfolds now in your ability to see differently, to question deeply, and to recognize yourself as part of the living mystery of existence. History may have removed the record, but it could never erase the truth, because the truth was never written only in books. It was written in you. Take a final moment to sit with everything that has been revealed, not as information, but as an inner echo. The hidden miracles removed from history were never meant to be worshipped as distant wonders, but remembered as invitations. Invitations to see beyond appearances, to question inherited narratives, and to reclaim a deeper relationship with reality itself. What was taken from the past was not only knowledge, but confidence in the inner dimension of being. When you realize this, history stops being a closed book and becomes a living mirror. The past no longer tells you what is possible. It reminds you of what was once known. And that knowing is returning quietly through those who feel that life must be more than repetition, fear, and limitation. Through those who sense that meaning is not imposed from outside, but awakened from within. Carry this awareness with you. Let it influence how you perceive coincidence, intuition, and moments of deep clarity. These are not accidents, they are reminders. The miraculous was never destroyed, only disguised, waiting for those willing to look beyond what they were told and listen to what they have always felt. And perhaps that is the greatest truth of all. History did not lose the miracles. Humanity forgot how to recognize them. Thanks for looking.